Good afternoon. This is Mala Singh from PC. So today's topic is about cost perception about green buildings, which is a very common question. Everybody is talking about the cost of the green building. Is green expensive or our true need to sustain? But let us understand, millions of years ago, several planets came into existence, but it was only our planet Earth which decided to give life and beautiful living to several species and to become Mother Earth. It means we have only one Earth to survive. So now we know that what we have done to the Earth because of population demand of natural resources, industrial growth, urbanization, consumption of natural resources leads to the global warming and climate change. But let us understand environment and growth can complement each other. This is what the need of the hour, that is a sustainable development. It's the very best solution which we have. This is the green buildings, which is the best solution. With estimated 60% of global energy consumption, the operation of the buildings contributes more to energy use and climate change than either transportation or industry. Very strange. So to meet the emerging climate change and carbon challenge, the human settlement needs retrofitting. Buildings have to be planned and designed with an holistic and integrated approach so that they contribute an enhancement of city environment, greenery, energy and water efficiency, human comfort and quality of life for all of us. Do we know all these missions of the country? India's national plan for climate change, we have 8 missions. If you see the 8th number mission, that's about the National Mission on Sustainable Habitat, which talks about the need of green building design practices with integrated and holistic approach to achieve this target. So green buildings will contribute a lot for the action plan of the climate change for the sustainable development of the country. Let us understand the green building movement in India. To promote green building movement in India, there are 2 organizations. One is Indian Green Building Council and GRIHA. These are the leading organizations who are working tremendously in the green building movement in India. Various rating systems have been evolved with the help of all stakeholders from the construction industry. They are specifically for different categories of the projects like IGBC Green Homes Rating, Lead India Core and Shell, Lead India New Construction, IGBC Green Township, that's for infrastructure as well, and IGBC Green SEZ, IGBC Green Factory Rating, Landscape Rating, which is newly launched, and we have very new existing building rating system which is just launched last month during Township Conference. And for GRIHA, in India, we have Swagriha for the smaller projects, where your project size is less than 2,500 square meter. And GRIHA rating is applicable for residential, commercial and government buildings and various institutional buildings. And there is a new rating system which is currently launched by the GRIHA, that is for the larger development rating system. It is applicable for the building where you need environment impact assessment, where your plot size is bigger and your plot construction, your built-up area is more than 1,50,000 square meter in terms of built-up area. So that is basically a larger development, and this particular rating also complements the Environment Management Plan of EIA notification 2006. Now, just let's have a quick view of the sum of the IGBC certified projects across the country. Currently, number is very big. Number is exceeding more than 350 in the certified buildings, and 2 billion square feet is already registered with the green building, IGBC. So movement is going on very nicely. So let's have a look in the GRIHA certified projects. It also covers residential, it covers individual homes, it also covers your commercial development and township as well, even the government buildings. Now let's come to the topic of the presentation, which was about the cost of green. There is no one size fits all answer to the question of the cost of green. Green buildings can be done with high or low cost both. It depends how we design. It depends the expertise. It depends the competence level our project team has, and they have a better understanding about the sustainability parameters. When we design a building, the first question comes in the mind, how much additional cost? How to make a building green? What is green? What is sustainability? Whose responsibility is this? It's me, it's developer, it's occupant, or it's who? It's a government or who? So I think let's talk about the stakeholders of the construction industry. Is there any one single stakeholder, or we all are the stakeholders? We have identified the construction stakeholders which cover your government also, who provide the policy for the construction, building codes, etc. And they basically regulate and monitoring, identify the policies for the regional level at the central level. So government is also a very strong stakeholder. And building users who are finally going to stay in the green building. So they also need to educate, they need to know about the green. Then other stakeholders who are the developers. So here the commitment of the developers, his intent to make a green building, which is very important. And the management system approach of the company, of the developer, which is very important. Then architects, how the architect understand the design sustainability parameters in the planning, which is very important. And the rest of the team, like expertise in terms of environmental planners, we need master planners, infrastructure planners for the larger development, and we need MEP consultant, we need various experts on board when we plan a project. And even when we plan a project and we start the construction, we still need a better educated execution team. They also understand the meaning of compliance. They also understand their role and responsibility, including our product manufacturers and suppliers. Because the product they are supplying, what green the product is, what is the value of recycled content, embodied energy, we need to understand all the technical specs of the products. So product supply should be also well competent in understanding of sustainability parameters. Now, let's talk about integrated approach and planning for green building design. Do you think integrated approach in planning for green building design leads to escalate the project cost? My answer is no. In fact, this approach minimizes the regulatory risk in the planning and also support climate change mitigation measures. This approach also adds value in the project by providing long-term paybacks and benefits in terms of energy and water savings. And this approach also defines social responsibility and contributes in the sustainable development and green economy. So overall, if we look into the integrated approach and planning for the green building design, that solves a lot of purpose in the planning itself. So sustainability is not below in the line item, it is a top priority in the planning. If you see the global studies, it was done by various experts across the world, and it is proven that green buildings do not require additional cost if design project team have thorough knowledge of green and sustainable parameters and also have the capability to incorporate and integrate these features in the planning stage of design. So the perception of additional cost remains in the mindset of only those people who consider sustainability parameters as an additional feature in the project. When establishing a design and a budget for a green building, the key point to remember is that sustainability is a program issue rather than an added requirement. The first question in budgeting should not be how much more will it cost, but how will we do this? That is more important for us. This must be done as early as possible in the project planning, and it must be considered at every step of design and construction. So we have various strategies, like we need to establish team goals. We need to identify the team of experts, what we need in the planning, the expectations from the experts that also need to be identified in the planning. The kind of experts we need on board, like architects, environmental planners, MEP experts who will look after our HVAC design, our plumbing design, our water management system, our energy management system, our landscape designing, our site analyst, who will give us idea about the site, the topography of site, who will give us idea about the environmental parameters and its impacts on the site. So it's very important to identify the team of experts in the planning. So that's the integrated approach. So we need a complete team on board rather than just single architects. That means I mean to say it's a holistic approach for integration of all the sustainability parameters in the planning when we start the planning of a project. Understanding of site is very important. Understanding of building footprint is very important. This makes our project in true sense a sustainable model. There are other parameters, other strategies like specific goals of sustainability in the program we need to set in the planning itself. Aligning budget with the sustainability program, which is very important aspect. Then staying on track through design and construction. So finally, we understand our cost and we can evaluate the exact cost we finally decided in the planning and what we have achieved in the end when we commission the project and we operate our building and maintain the building. So we can conclude the savings also. This approach will help us to conclude the savings efficiently. Perhaps I think the most important thing to remember is that sustainability is not a below in the line item. So it need to be treated first thought in the mind when we start the planning of any kind of project, starting from smaller size, medium size, or maybe it is a larger development. Let's talk about synergy of cost with current environmental policy and design regulation codes in India. There is no doubt that better understanding of environmental policy and applicable design regulations and building codes available in each region of India currently to incorporate specified sustainability parameters of the policy and regulations in the planning stage itself, automatically it will lead to define the exact cost of the project planned. Because everything is well planned and it's a part of your planning, whatever you need as per the legal bylaws. So we are not avoiding any condition or any parameter which was part of your legal by codes. Hence, there is no point of additional cost if you know how to incorporate all those building codes and design codes mandatory as per the legal bylaws in the planning. There is a notification under EIA, under Environment Impact Assessment by the Ministry of Environment and Forest. Their environmental clearance is mandatory for all the construction projects having built-up area, means total covered construction area more than 20,000 square meter. That means if your construction area is more than 2 lakh square feet, environmental clearance is mandatory for you to get it from the state environmental appraisal committees. The following sustainability parameters have been already covered as a mandatory protocol of the project design and implementation in India, which covers our site planning. So site planning has to be as per the National Building Code. And National Building Code itself talks about your topography. It talks about the landscape design during construction, post-occupancy. It talks about the soil erosion control measures. It talks about the sedimentation control plan. So that means all site planning as per the environmental condition is already covered in the National Building Code. Not only this, there is another chapter in the National Building Code has been introduced now, which purely talks about only sustainability parameters, how to do the sustainable development. It covers all the parameters. Even in the design planning, if you see the current by codes, as per the National Building Code, we need to understand climatology, orientation of the building. Then for energy management and design, we need to have understanding of energy conservation building code, so that we can design our building envelope efficiently by designing energy efficient technologies. Water management and design, that also talks about National Building Code, Bureau of Indian Standards, and Central Pollution Control Board talks about the water quality norms of your potable water, of your wastewater quality norms. It talks about your treated water norms, even the irrigation, for the irrigation, what kind of water quality parameters we need. So all these codes are there, only the challenge is the implementation. Then even if you see the local by codes, it talks about the material management also. There is a notification by Ministry of Environment and Forest for the fly ash use. If your project is within the 100-kilometer radius of any site, if you have a power plant there, still you need the fly ash use in your construction materials. So construction management plan and the compliance monitoring reports are an integral part of the regulatory framework. Only the challenge is, again, I am saying it is only my mind setup, I want to do it or not, or implementation procedure I understand or not. Does my team is well expertise, they understand how to comply the compliances? This is where we are lacking. In fact, if you see the environmental conditions, it is clearly defined in the environmental clearance conditions that occupancy certificate should not be issued to the project until all environmental infrastructure and sustainability parameters have not been installed, commissioned and validated by the local corporation bodies. So such an important thing, we know that it is already in place in the legal by courts, but need and challenges. Lack of environmental policy awareness in the architectural education system. Because most of the architects, they don't know about the environmental policy. I'm not talking about the experienced architects, but I'm talking about the young buddies who are studying now. They need to educate. Intent of developers to implement the required mandatory norms, which is also very important. And understanding of paybacks and benefits for the developer, that is also very important. And government incentive schemes may encourage the same. Lack of expertise. Training need to be provided to the execution team. Then who will provide the team? There are so many challenges. Even if you see the current regulation is in India, some of the states, I would appreciate, they have already initiated some incentive schemes for their regions to encourage sustainability. Like if you see in Gujarat state, government has mandatory rainwater harvesting policy. They have a mandatory solar policy and integrated water management facility for recycling and reuse of wastewater rather than installing the individual sewage treatment plant for an individual building, which is very, very good or sustainable infrastructure, I would say. Hopefully this kind of infrastructure we can develop and we can follow the same model for the other states. And also there is a import-export solar policy in Gujarat which basically provide you 9 rupees 47 paisa in return for the generation of 1 unit under the export policy of renewable directly connected with the grid. So it's a win-win situation for the developer or for any kind of building where you are using your roof for the solar generation and it is directly connected with the grid and you are getting the energy in 5 rupees per unit and giving the energy to the grid, supplying it in the rate of 9 rupees 47 paisa, which is a very good payback and you get it monthly basis. Even if you see, let's come to the Thane, Maharashtra. They have various kind of schemes, like we call it rental schemes, which is being promoted by MMRDA. And there you have mandatory solar hot water policy and provide tax benefits and various other green parameters are integral part of their mandatory policies. And let's come to the Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, it has already well-defined solar policy and subsidies and incentives and benefits to the people who are following this policy. And even in the rainwater harvesting, there is a refund policy also. But please remember, penalties are also well defined in Tamil Nadu, which is, I would say, in India, there is a chalta hai attitude. Unless you don't have penalties, you don't follow the rule also. I hope Tamil Nadu government has thought about that. Now, let's come to the Bangalore. In Bangalore, there is a water supply and sewerage board. They have already decided the tax rebate on rainwater harvesting filters. That means relaxation on VAT for key components used in the installation. Wow, what a beautiful incentive this is. At least this is encouraging people to follow the sustainable technologies and to comply the practices. Other tax rebates for implementation of solar water heater and 30% of the total connected load of the common area. It has to be integrated with the renewable energy. That is also a mandatory policy in the Bangalore. Then let's come to the Uttarakhand Electricity Regulatory Commission. They also provide you 60% subsidy for the solar water heater. Then let's come to the Maharashtra again. In Pimpri Chinchwad Municipal Corporation, there is a rebate in property tax and builder premium for the green buildings. You get 10% rebate if it is a 1-star rating. You get 50% if it is a 2-star. You get 75%. It's like that. It is depending upon the rating type which you are going to achieve in the certification. And this is currently for the Griha rated. And MNRE incentives have been already identified for the Griha rated projects. And there is another scheme by the financial institution. I would appreciate State Bank of India to provide 0.25% concession in the interest rate for the occupants who are buying green building. Wow, I hope other institutions or financial institution in India, they should also do some kind of these kind of initiatives so that green building can be really promoted in true sense. And there is another very big incentive. I would say this incentive is totally applicable to the and very beneficial for the developers. That is a faster environmental approvals for IGBC and Griha pre-certified projects. If you see in Maharashtra, in other states as well, currently mostly the developers are getting benefit for the faster clearances of their project. Still, I feel government needs to streamline the incentive policies and the understanding of paybacks for all the states from central level and regional level to encourage the implementation of sustainability parameters in a bigger way. Because still people are confused. If you see, I'll give you an example of Gujarat. In Gujarat, the policy is well defined what to do with the solar policy, what is the benefit for you. But if I come to the Maharashtra, we don't understand, even a common man doesn't understand the benefit of solar policy in Maharashtra. So there is a need from the government side also to streamline the incentives and what are the benefit of these policies if I comply for my project as a developer. So there is a big need. So my message to the government to comply and to, I would say, regularize some incentive program for the developers to encourage them also to adopt green. I would conclude it like this. Incorporation of all sustainability parameters defined as per legal regulations in the design planning itself leads to create an integrated design approach. I mean to say, by involving all the stakeholders which we need in the planning, the experts, our planners, as I said, architects, environmental planners and other experts on the board itself in the planning, and also complement the requirement of the green building norms in the project design, it definitely reduces the regulatory risk and also keep no option for adoption of green separately. That means green becomes an integrated part of your planning. It is not something additional for you then. So hence, legally compliant projects have no additional cost. And who wants to take risk? Everybody has to understand the importance of legal compliance. And other than legal compliance, if we do this green initiative voluntary basis also, I won't think there is a harm in that. Finally, we are thinking about our future generation and for better quality of people and for our lives also, because we also need better quality of life. Then, let's come to the green building and glazing compliance for sustainable design and cost efficiency. Can we assume a building without any opening, where there is no outer connectivity? My answer is no. Then what we need? An adequate material in the building opening which can allow us to view the outer world and also reduce heat gain. That is, I think, glass. Everybody, all of us know that. Otherwise, how we will see outside? What is the function and what is the connection between outdoor and indoor environment? Glass is an excellent green material if used intelligently. So please let's remember, if used intelligently, then it is very, very excellent material as a green material. Certain glasses, we have already wide range of materials available in the market, which if we use in our project design, it provides us a great amount of natural light in the building to energize the interiors. Thus, glass in the building substantially reduces the need for artificial lighting and also allows daylight to light the interiors. It leads to achieve higher energy efficiency in the green buildings. It means it reduces the HVAC load also, because it is reducing heat gain, which is the most important thing in Indian climate. It also can be used in residential, commercial, any kind of structure we can use glass, because basically it is setting a connection between indoor and outer environment, which is the need of our health and for our better quality of life. Now let us understand when we select a glass. So how to choose an appropriate glass for my specific design building. But let us understand the glass selection has to be as per specific for the design. It is not common, it has to be based on the region where I am designing a building. Like we have different climate zone in India. If you see the National Building Code, we have 5 climatic zones of India. And we need to understand building orientation, our wall window ratio. These are very important parameters when we procure a glass for a particular building or particular type of glazing we need. Building orientation. Here we need to understand that larger facade should be in north and south and buffer spaces in the west and east. So these are some green principles, and sometime we may follow or we may not to follow. It depends upon the site conditions and your own needs as well of the design. But wall window ratio. This is the ratio of vertical fenestration area to the gross exterior wall area. So wall window ratio is very, very important parameter for the selection of the glass. Then solar heat gain coefficient. It is a ratio of solar heat gain entering the space through the fenestration area to the incident solar radiation. Typically it is ranging from 0.9 to 0.1, where the lower value indicate lower solar gain. So that means if your SHGC is lower, your U value is lower, you are basically reducing your heat gain. So finally what we need reduction in the heat gain. This is what finally we are needing as a green and sustainability parameter in the green building. And shading also playing a very important role. Our shading strategy, that also reduce insolation and heat gain. Like we have various strategies available like pergola, chhajjas, jalis, overhangs, green wall or plantation on east and west side. So these are the various strategies for the shading if we comply in the green building when we are selecting the glass. So I think we need an integrated approach. If we have the better understanding of all these parameters, definitely we can choose a better glass for the building. So then finally, in true sense, I can say the glass is green if we select it intelligently by doing proper simulation and analysis studies. There are various compliances. As I said, we have Green Building Standard of Indian Green Building Council, and Indian Green Building Council has 2 standards for the green homes. Earlier version was 1.0, but the 2.0 version have been introduced now. So in 2.0 version, there is an annexure 1 which talks about your 2 kind of approaches. One is that is your prescriptive approach, other is the energy performance approach. I hope performance approach is more cost effective when we are designing a glazing for a building. When we do the modeling and simulation for a building, based on when we want to achieve IGBC Green Home pre-certification or certification, then we need to have the better understanding of these compliances, and we need to refer these compliances as per the defined standard of Indian Green Building Council. This table shows you very clear, this is referring the annexure 1 of IGBC Green Home version 2. Here you can see the climate zones are defined into 5 areas for the composite climate, hot and dry, warm and humid, moderate and cold regions. So you can, when you are designing a building, if you understand your building is falling in which climate, which is your zone, so you understand WWR ratio of your building. So you can evaluate what kind of SHGC value you need for the glazing selection. That gives you the very clear-cut idea. And here, very important idea in IGBC Green Homes, when you define if there is U value has not very big role, or I would say significance, if your wall window ratio is more less than 30%. That means only the 5.7 value for U will be well sufficient for the baseline criteria when we are doing modeling and simulation. Only you need to focus on U value when your wall window ratio is more than 30% if you are complying with IGBC Green Home version 2.0 and also complying with the performance based approach. So these are the compliances only for performance based approach. Now, I'll come to the prescriptive criteria for building envelope measures as per IGBC Green Home version 2.0, that is Annexure 2. Here if you see the SHGC value for various climate zones, here it is well defined with respect to various wall window ratio for less than 20%, 20 to 30%, and if it is ranging more than 30%. So you have to follow this value to achieve the pre-certification or certification for IGBC certification. Then let's talk about the prescriptive criteria for building envelope measures for the glazing U value. But this is basically only for the prescriptive criteria, not for the performance approach. Here for the various climate zone, you can see the maximum U value where your wall window ratio is less than 30%. So it is very common value, that is 3.3. And minimum U value, if your wall window ratio is more than 30%, it is 2.8, which is a common value for all the climatic zones. Now, as per Energy Conservation Building Code 2007, if you refer this standard, which is applicable for GRIHA also, and it is applicable for the Ministry of Environment and Forest EIA guidelines, and it becomes a part of your condition if you are getting environmental clearance from the State Environmental Committee or Authority under EIA. Because ECBC has been given a very wide significance in the condition there also to comply a building envelope designing. You need to submit a report also there to the ministry, what kind of building envelope you are designing, what are the U values, R values, your solar heat coefficient value, and it should match with the ECBC compliance. So I mean to say ECBC becomes your regulatory compliance then. And here in this table you can see the wall window ratio where you have less than 40%, you have for various climates SHGC value you can comply, and where you have 40 to 60%, there you have already maximum SHGC in different ranges for composite, hot and dry, warm and humid, already given in the table. Now, glass with low U value and low solar heat gain coefficient gives good energy performance in tropical climate, whereas a glass with low U value and with high HSEC give good energy performance in the cold climate. Tangible and intangible benefits of glass. Now I would like to talk about that also, because intangible benefits, it is basically creating a psychological connection to the outside world, and it also reduces visual fatigue, which is finally affecting the health and increase my productivity also in the building. And tangible benefits, comfortable lighting conditions, reduction in the load on lighting power, which is basically the need of a sustainable model. A daylight sensor reduce the artificial lighting. It also needs and increase the life of the fixtures, which is also very important in terms of cost. Because if it increase the life of my fixtures, then again I need not to pay more cost for that. So finally, it is again a tangible benefit of using this kind of sustainability technologies. So low U value and low SHGC reduces the heat ingress as well, and resulting into decrease in HVAC load. And we know that in commercial building, we have a huge load of HVAC in terms of energy consumption. So glass can play a very important role to reduce the HVAC load there if it is being selected with intelligence. Glass has recycled content also and provide regional material credit as well. In LEED certification, if you are complying, if you will see the glass contributes 4 points, and in GRIHA, it has great impact on criteria 13 and criteria 14 to reduce conventional energy demand and to optimize energy performance of the building. So comprehensive energy simulation studies with the help of all the stakeholders, your project team, your product suppliers, vendors, better understanding of technical specs of all sustainability technologies and products finally leads to reap the maximum benefits. Now, our next parameter is it's about the construction practices during construction as well as post-occupancy for the green building design. Do you think sustainable construction practices increase the cost? Because our topic is cost. We are evaluating how much cost for green building. My answer is no. In fact, these sustainable practices If we comply during construction as well as post-occupancy, we'll keep our site healthy, will not disturb the ecosystem, and will minimize the impact of project activities on the environment. Also conserve and preserve natural resources. This will lead to increase in the productivity, healthy and safer environment for construction workers and site project team during construction. And when our occupants occupy the building, even after occupancy also, even in green building, we follow the better practices in terms of operation of building. Even we comply with the building management system, we follow the better practices and maintain the green building features properly, efficiently, still we would be able to maintain healthy and better indoor environmental quality in the green buildings. During construction, if we can manage a construction management plan, we design in the planning, and we already incorporate the conditions and guidelines to comply all the sustainable practices required as per the green building norms. That may be IGBC, that may be GRIHA, or that may be your legal codes of MOEF or your local building codes, whatever is applicable to your state or your regional area. So I think then it become in true sense a sustainable construction management plan. It is not just a construction management plan, because you are incorporating all the sustainability parameters, its action, its strategies, its role and responsibilities you are defining in the construction management plan itself. So people understand its responsibility, your project team understand the importance of compliance, and they would be able to finally achieve the compliance implementation adequately. Even the contractor terms and conditions, if we should update it accordingly, we incorporate all these conditions in the work order. So contractor also understands its responsibility. Even the responsibility of the execution team, if we identify in the planning and the implementation and the monitoring of the compliance on site, we basically evaluate and monitor it properly. I don't think we will be able to put any additional costs in following the sustainable practices, because this becomes a part of our behavior approach then. If we comply all these practices, we understand the importance of it and we have the expertise to comply it. And then our actions, our action plan, it is executed and monitored. I think finally then we are creating a sustainable model and there is no additional cost then. So here are some visuals, some pictures you can see which is talking about some practices which we can identify and we need to comply during construction. During construction, what happens? We need to maintain our site. Site planning is very important. We need to understand the topography of the site. We need to understand how many trees are there, how many plants we are cutting, how many we are retaining. So all these strategies, if we identify in the planning, so those are the sustainable practices we need. So where is the meaning of cost then? And then if you see, there are some practices, even it is well defined in the EIA manual of Government of India of Ministry of Environment and Forest, where it talks about all national building codes and best sustainable practices which is being adopted during construction and post occupancy. If we are really able to comply, we understand that and we train our people accordingly, I don't think there is any additional cost. It becomes our behavior approach. And these are some visuals. You can see the tree plantation, mulching, and topsoil preservation, and reusing it for the further landscaping. And even if you can see in some of the pictures are showing cleaning of tires, because when the PUC certified vehicles are entering in your premises, that time also you need to maintain your site with better environment, good air quality. All these environmental parameters we need to be taken care during construction as well. Even the noise parameters, all environmental parameters I'm talking about. Like site fencing, because barricading also helps us a lot, because sometime my project site it will be in the residential area. So other residential area will not get disturbance and dust emission will be also reduced. Now let's come to the during construction we need better HSE management policies also, because health, safety and management, this is an integral part of my construction management plan.